Hello, I'm Mark and welcome to the SimHanger, the SimHanger for all things flight sim related, and welcome to the second in our challenging flight series. If this is your first time here, each episode of Challenging Flights will feature a different scenario, different aircraft, different part of the world, and definitely different weather. We won't be going to all the normal challenging airports, no Luklas or Innsbruck here. We're going to be looking for the less frequented, but equally challenging airports around the world. During each episode, we'll give you the details of the flight plan and the weather setup, so you can copy the flight if you want to. In addition, all flights and scenarios are designed to be compatible with both Xplane and prepared, VR and non-VR. If flight sim is your thing, don't forget to subscribe and tap the bell for future notifications. Well, today we've got a cracker for you. We're going to be flying from France to Switzerland, and we're going to be landing at an airport that'll give Innsbruck a run for its money. Let's get started. Our departure today is nestled in a valley within the French Alps and overlooked by the towering mountain Mont Blanc, whose literal translation means White Mountain. The peak of Mont Blanc towers over 15,000 feet, or nearly 4,800 meters above the valley floor. Sallenches Airport is surrounded by very high terrain, and a fairly steep climb out to safe altitude is required. Single runway suitable for single and twins and the smaller business jets. With a relatively short runway and at an altitude of 1,756 feet, preferred arrivals are via runway 17 and departures via runway 35. With no nav aids, visual approaches and departures are a prerequisite. For the flight today, I've chosen Carenado's Pilatus PC12. Choose any aircraft you like, but bear in mind it needs to be able to fly at 17,000 feet for the approach. I have Simcoders Reality Expansion Pack installed and did a video on that previously, and I'll leave links to that video in the notes below. I'm also using the GTN 750 from Reality XP. We're parked today on the apron at Sallenches. Our destination today is in the Swiss Alps, and it is the old Celtic settlement of Sion. It is one of the oldest settlements in Switzerland and has a turbulent past, particularly in the medieval period. Surrounded by expansive vineyards, today it's known as a popular ski destination, and once having bid for the 2006 Winter Olympics. Sion Airport, for any French speakers, forgive me if I'm pronouncing that wrong, is situated in the base of a very large valley. One runway 2507. The airport accommodates both military and civilian traffic and has a very busy and active glider community based at the airport using the grass runway. There's only one approach to the airport, and that's via runway 25, and that requires an initial approach altitude of 17,000 feet. The airport elevation is 1,581 feet. To ramp up our challenge, we're going to be setting some custom weather, and we're going to be using ActiveSky XP. Of course, use any weather program you prefer, or just set your conditions in your simulator to stormy. The flight today is an IFR instrument flight rating, as we're going to reduce the visibility considerably for the approach. And for much of the approach, we'll be flying blind. Our approach today is going to be directly from Sallenches to Goleb to steer us through the Alps and then on to Sion airport, and from there commence an approach to Sion. Now this area has some beautiful scenery, but as we're going to be flying in cloud, we're not going to be able to see it. So here's a quick fast forward view of the scenery we're not going to see on this flight. Enjoy. Okay, let's set up our weather. Make sure that your flight simulator is active and your weather program is connected. Our departure, Lima Foxtrot Hotel Zulu. Destination, Lima Sierra Golf Sierra. And our cruise, which is also our approach altitude, 17,000 feet. Select Direct GPS and it'll come up with an error. That means that Lima Foxtrot Hotel Zulu is not in the database. Ignore that. Click on Map. In the top right hand corner, click on Lock to Aircraft. Then right click on the aircraft and add new custom weather area is chosen. Make sure it's set to manual and then hit Next. So let's set up our winds. The wind direction, I'm going to choose 300. I'm taking off from runway 35 and landing at runway 25. So 300 seems a good choice. Wind speed, I'm going to choose 10 and have it gusting to 20 with a little bit of variance, 2 or 3 with light turbulence. That's about the maximum the Pilatus can be cleared to land at. Surface temperatures, fairly warm. That's okay, I'm going to leave that. Now surface visibility, well, we're going to turn that right down and we're going to turn that down to 5. very limited visibility, increase the challenge. QNH, that's okay. We'll just click next there and leave that. I do want some rain, and I'm going to have light rain. That's set. Let's click next. And now to set up the clouds. I'm going to choose 2 layers of clouds. The first one fairly low and the other one higher. So we're going through various types of cloud. So I'm going to have the base altitude at 4,300 feet, 2,000 in thick, broken at 7/8, so there's a little bit of visibility but not much. And then for the second layer I'm going to have the base at around about 8,300 feet, and I'm going to make this a fairly thick layer, let's say 6,000. We will add that. I'm going to make that broken as well. Now ActiveSky will vary the weather slightly, but that gives us a fairly good range of heavy cloud to fly through. I'm going to set up the various turbulences as shown there. Light all the way except for at 6,000 moderate. 100 nautical miles, that will take in both airports, so we can set that. And here's a summary of the weather that we've set. Fairly windy, limited visibility with cloud and a little bit of rain. Now we're going to hit OK and we should see the weather change in the simulator. Yep, there we go. That looks about right. One of the advantages of having the simulator started first is you can have a look and see the immediate impact of any changes that you make. If you're interested in this type of thing, I'll leave a link in the notes below to my earlier challenging flights, Sedona to Talarud, which had a difficulty rating of 5.5. This one, difficulty 7. We're on the small apron at Sallenches Airport. We can see the winds blowing quite strongly. Pre-flight is done. Let's get this started. Checked, our handbrake is on, our power control lever is at idle, our condition lever is fuel cut off, flaps are up and gear is down, so that's all okay. So to the overhead panel, inverter on, battery 1 and battery 2 on, beacon light on. And we just check our fuel pumps are working manually. That seems okay. We will now turn them back to auto. Check our lamps. Lamp test is good. Stick pusher. Stall indicator, that's all okay.
Fire.
And fire test is good. The wind is quite strong. I can hear it quite loudly. Just cancel the warnings. There we go. And our Garmin is now booting up, our GTN 750. A quick reminder of our route. There it is. And we'll now put that into the Garmin. So we're leaving from Mont Blanc or Sallenches Airport to our first waypoint of Goleb. That's that in, and then we're going to Sion Airport, Lima Sierra Golf Kilo, that's correct, and our destination of Lima Sierra Golf Sierra, Sion, and we'll put that in, and that is good enough for now. We will be putting in an approach at a later stage. So we just check a quick summary from the airport to Goleb, and we'll be doing an approach down the valley, but we'll put that in once we're on our way. Nav lights on. That's our cabin signs on. And let's start. Push the starter. We're now going to look at the NG It'll beep at 13, which means we can then push the condition lever forward and supply fuel to the engine. Now it's going to make a racket as it starts up, something very typical of the Pilatus PC12. Just waiting for the engines to settle down. There we go, starting to settle down now. Inverter off, and we can put our generator 1 on and generator 2 on, and we can also turn on our avionics. Let's now have a listen to ATIS, and it should be something similar to what we put into
Lima,
ActiveSky.
Foxtrot Hotel, Mike Airport information. Foxtrot 112 Zulu, weather, wind 297 at 10, gusting to 20, visibility 5, sky condition, ceiling 2600, broken, ceiling 6600, broken, light, rain, temperature 24, dew point 17, QNH 1026, advice on initial contact, you have information. Foxtrot.
Setting our transition altitude, and runway 35 is the right departure runway. Now setting our headings and our altitude. We need 17,000 feet as a minimum because that's the starting altitude for the approach. Now setting up the autopilot, presetting altitude and heading. Make sure I don't fly into a mountain. Let's get the yoke out the way, and I'm going to set up my squawk. It's IFR, so I do need a squawk code, and I'm going to choose 4567 for today's flight. As we're flying at 17,000 feet, I need to put the oxygen on. There we go, that's now on, and now setting the cabin pressure for about 17,500 feet. Should be 500 feet above the planned altitude. I'm now putting my taxi, landing and strobe lights on as I'm going to taxi straight to the runway, which is just there. Condition lever to flight idle and throttle into beta reverse to control the taxi, and here we go. Announce our departure on Unicom and just check there's no visible traffic, and then we're cleared to enter the runway. Now lining up, I can't use much of the runway, it's fairly short, I'm going to need most of that. Throttle out of beta, or power control lever out of beta, and flap set to the first notch down, 15. Gear is up, flaps are up, I'm climbing at about just 2,000 feet per minute. I need a fairly high rate of climb to clear the mountains. I'm already coming up on my first waypoint, which is Goleb, I'm at 4,800 feet and climbing. I need to be around 5,000 at least. There we go. Autopilot is on and we're now on our way. Now starting to climb through the first layer of cloud. Visibility is quite limited and I'm watching my power very carefully. I need to keep the power on and the rate of climb relatively high. Now overhead Goleb and now turning towards Sanaan Airport. We're briefly between the cloud layers and there we go, straight into the second layer of cloud that we set up in ActiveSky, and visibility is now 0. Looks like we're just starting to clear the cloud layers and landing and taxi lights off now as we have much better visibility and continuing our climb to 17,000. We're currently 11,300. Rate of climb around about 1,800. This gives us an opportunity to have a look at the approach. It's a single runway 2507 with all approaches being runway 25. We're going to set up the approach for Golf Sierra 603, then on to Masab, and then on to Aleto where we'll start our descent. It is an offset ILS, an IGS on 110.7. The missed approach is maximum climb loop round to Grana. The descent is a 6-degree descent down the valley. The key here is not only the altitude but your speed, and you need to set up for the approach very early indeed. Our approach is going to be at about 110 knots, so a descent rate of 1200 will be required. Let's now set up that approach. We're going to click on Sion and load a procedure. Going to go to approach and we're going to choose the IGS 25 approach. Click OK and that's it, it's locked in. Once we get over Sion we are going to use our direct to, and it's going to be direct to Golf Sierra 603. We can't do that immediately of course because it would take us off our planned flight route. We're still climbing and coming up on 14,000 feet. We are climbing to 17,000 and we need to be at 17,000 because as we saw earlier the terrain on the initial approach is very high indeed. We're about 5 miles from Sanaan and now time for us to put in our approach and direct to Golf Sierra 603. We'll activate that and that now changes our route and is going to bring us in to the initial approach point. Once we get to the approach point, it's a fairly tight turn and we need to monitor our speed. So we're now slowing to 160 and getting ready to configure the aircraft for a fairly rapid descent. We're now overhead, Golf Sierra 603, and turning on to our approach for landing runway 25. Gear down, and I'm going to set flaps to first notch down 15 degrees. I'm planning an approach at about 110 knots. On this approach you can be a little bit too high or a little bit too fast, but if you're too high and too fast, well, you're just not going to get down in time. Nav radio set up and switching over to approach mode on the GTN 750. Time for the descent, so taking the altitude off the autopilot, and I can now start my descent. The GTN shows me the altitude for each waypoint, and I'm going to be monitoring that and the speed very carefully on the way down. We're not going to be able to see the mountains, so adherence to the altitudes is very important on this approach. I'm slightly above my planned speed, so second stage of flaps, 25 degrees put in, adjusting my trim to accommodate the extra flaps. We're just hitting the top of the first cloud layer, so visibility is very limited at this time. Airspeed's 120, I need to come back a little bit on the power control levers and ease off slightly. Just starting to get pushed around a little bit by the turbulence. Altitude's okay, but I am just about 300 feet too high at the moment. Between the cloud layers again, and we can see the very high terrain surrounding us. Reminder, all scenery is default, Xplane 11.35. Airspeed 110, looking good. I'm still about 200 feet too high. And now entering the bottom layer of cloud. I'm putting on both landing and taxi lights because of the visibility. Transition altitude set to 1026 for the airport, and I'm just below 6,000 feet. I need to increase my rate of descent slightly, so last stage of flaps, 35 degrees coming in. Looking for airspeed of 100 knots. Hopefully we're going to break out of this cloud just now as we are getting fairly close to the airport. Altitude 4,600, and at last we have some visibility. I know the airport is down there somewhere. I can really feel the turbulence, the wind is really blowing, and I can just get my first sight of the runway slightly to our left. The approach or ILS is offset, so autopilot off, and now adjusting for a manual approach, runway 25. Once again, I'm a little bit high, but the airspeed is low, so I should be able to adjust. I really don't fancy a go-round. Carenado's PC12 with the Simcoders Reality Expansion Pack. I can really feel the turbulence and I'm struggling to hold it, kicking in the rudder. Need to watch my airspeed, don't want to get too slow on the approach. Still a little high. 500 feet to go and runway dead ahead, but the turbulence is pushing me left and right. It really is very bumpy on this approach at the moment. Sick bags in the pockets and seats in front of you. I now regret putting in that last stage of flaps. It would have probably been better to land without full flaps. It would have been less bumpy, I think, easier to control. Well, we're committed to the landing, so here we go. And we're down. Power levers to idle and just letting it slow down. Manual braking at 60 knots. And we're going to take this off ramp here and find a parking to the left. If Flight Sim is your thing, don't forget to subscribe and tap the bell for future notifications. Well, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I enjoyed making it for you. My next video is going to be coverage of COSFID, Flight Sim 2019. I'm going to be there on Saturday and Sunday. If you're going to be there, please come up and say hello. I'd love to meet you. Until then, look after yourselves and bye for now.